Well, welcome everyone to today's Ask an Expert. It's 5 o'clock, so time to get started. We'll probably have some additional people join us. One of the things about this event, since there isn't anyone monitoring the chat, if you do have a question, just unmute yourself and start talking. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer everything you need, but if not, we'll figure out where to find the answers. So let me start by introducing myself. My name is Todd Russell. I am one of the career directors here in the College of Math and Science. Been with Brigham Young University for about a year. The last 30 plus years I've worked in the tech industry as a recruiter, as a university relations manager, and as an intern program manager for a long time. So I've recruited students across the country and have been part of technical interviews for a long time. Now, since this Ask an Expert is not focused specifically on CS majors, it's about any technical interview. In general, what we talk about in this presentation will be something that can happen across any discipline. We'll go ahead and I'm going to just kind of skip that little movie that I had on there because it's not necessarily relevant. It's more of an icebreaker. But you know, it's interesting in today's environment, we have a million ways to have an interview and a million types of interviews. So companies really look for what is best for their needs, and really what they're looking for is ways to find out if you fit what they need. It can seem a little overwhelming, but if you understand this one truth, which is recruiters want you to succeed in the interview, then I think hopefully that will alleviate a little bit of fear when it comes to the interviewing process. I think that's so important to understand. They rarely, if they're a good recruiter or a good company that really has designed their search the right way, it is not about trying to trick people or just do a bunch of busy work to see who sticks it out. It really is about, let's find out if you're a cultural and a technical fit for what we need, because when a company needs to hire someone, there's timeline involved, and the sooner the better. So they really have designed it to be a little streamlined. Now there's two main types of interviews. Behavioral interviews, that's always going to come first. It is to find out if you are a cultural and behavioral fit for the company. The questions focus on themes like teamwork or commitment, your communication style, maybe it's your communication strengths, you know, time management, conflict resolution, accountability, things like that. Those are the questions and the design of that behavioral interview. Sometimes those happen right while you're meeting somebody at a career fair. But most often they take place as the very first interview you have. Now your resume got you in the door because they looked at it and made sure you were the right major, that you had taken some classes they were interested in, and had some general qualifications that fit. Now they got to start with the screening process. If you get through the behavioral interview, now you're through that gateway onto the next round, which is the technical interview. And we're going to focus on technical interviewing today, and hopefully you understand what a technical interview is. It's typically features questions that are specific to the role that you've applied for. They probably are going to stretch your brain. There's probably going to be some sort of numerical or quantitative reasoning in there. But those questions are really there just to start to assess your ability to solve problems, the kind of problems that they're interested in hiring you to solve. So we'll do just a super quick review of some of those, methodologies, getting prepped for any interview first. I want to make sure you understand that that's an important thing to remember. So no matter whether this is a behavioral or a technical interview, you've got to do some of the same things all the time. You got to make sure you've researched the company that you're going to pursue, and you understand the position and the organization and the culture, because the technical interview is going to demonstrate even more of that company culture and what they're interested in. So you've got to make sure you've done your homework. If you've got an inside contact, that's going to be a critical thing as well to give you some insights when it comes time for that technical interview. What types of things are they most concerned about, or what is it that they're looking for? You've got to do all those things to look at your LinkedIn profile, make sure your social media brand is up and ready to go. You might even be able to network and connect with some people that will give you some additional insights as to what that technical interview is going to feel like and look like. Then always bring with you the documentation you're going to need. Now, in today's world, this is all going to be virtual, so you've got to make sure that you've got your file folder open with your resume, ready to go in case they say, hey, shoot us over a couple of copies of your resume. We don't have them right now, or whatever. So make sure you've got that. If your technical interview requires some sort of portfolio, then make sure you have relevant samples. Make sure those are ready to go. Not just that you know you have them somewhere, but you either got it open or you've got hard copies if you want to go through it that way. There's a lot of options for you, okay? Make sure you've got a list of some questions. Make sure that you're ready to go and practice. When I say practice, there's plenty of resources out there that may give you some sample technical questions based on your major. So if you're a CS major and there may be some technical questions out there to help you code, or if you're doing some sort of procedure, whether that's in the sciences and you've got to talk about formulas and things like that, there's going to be resources out there. So please make sure you go and find those. Okay, so we've already talked about behavioral-based questions a little bit. They're going to be things about commitment, communication. Tell me about a time when you did this, or give me an example of whatever. Now, questions by recruiters come in a really specific format almost all the time. It's called the SAR statement, or the SAR approach. That's describing the situation, the actions in which you took, and the result, what it resulted in, what it did, what it made or created, or its outcome. Your technical questions are going to be very similar. Make sure that you understand that about the things that you have done. If you did a project in class, you need to be able to explain the situation, action, and result in technical terms as to what you did, and be ready to walk them through it if they ask for that kind of depth. And we're going to show the types of interviews, technical interviews, that most companies do. They're going to do one or all three of these next stage type interviews. So most common that I took part in, since I was a recruiter, I was a non-technical individual, meaning I understood what the company did. I knew a lot of the technical things they did, but my role was not technical. So I may have had, I shouldn't say may have had, most of the recruiters will have something like this. They'll have a list of questions that are technical in nature and a list of acceptable answers. And they will ask in that very first technical phone screen some pretty basic stuff to see if you can answer the technical things they're looking at. So stage one is usually a technical phone screen. Stage two technical interviews are At times, not always, but there may be an assignment. And it could be live or it could be something that they send home with you. And they want you to do it and then come back the next day. Or they may have you log in to a system that they have purchased. Maybe it's a third-party system that does evaluation, technical evaluation. Maybe it's a coding test. Maybe it is a bunch of problem-solving tests for a specific industry, whether that's chemical engineering or mechanical engineering. It could be something like that. But there are many types of either cases or take-home assignments that are part of that technical base, okay? And the third type or third stage in a lot of companies when they're using all three of these would be something like a whiteboard challenge. That's almost always live. It's in front of a panel of people who are technical. They're either going to be people you are going to work with in the future, or they could be people that are in the process of hiring. Could be 4 or 5 hiring managers all in a room together and having you go through something. Now, contrary to popular belief, the purpose of that technical interview is not to trick you with riddles or brain teasers or impossible questions. Some do that, yes, it's true, but most do not. It's really about seeing how you tackle real world problems, like the ones you might be facing when you're on the job, okay? So just remember that. It's about seeing how you attack a problem. It's not, almost always, it's not as much about the outcome as it is about the process that you go through. So let's talk about, actually, I'm going to stop and see if anybody has any questions yet before we move on to the next section.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you say some of these questions, they're supposed to help them see how you tackle a problem.
Yes.
So a lot of the ways that I tackle a problem is and everyone that I know is we Google the results when we don't know how to figure it out. We Google things well, I mean, not just the results, but we do computer searches, textbook searches, and we try to piece together off of little bits that we know. In these interviews, are we allowed to bring in, like how does that work? Because I feel like that's not a very accurate representation of how I would tackle a problem if I can't search any sources.
No, I think that's a very valid question. I think it's going to be a combination of things. It depends on where you're at. I would say maybe as I go through these, maybe it will answer your question as to what they're looking for and why they would look for it the way they do. So let me do that. If I still haven't answered your question, let me come back to it. Is that all right?
Sounds great.
Yeah. So let's first talk about what you're going to bring, which you should bring to every interview. You got to bring something to write with and a pencil. I have conducted a million interviews, not a million, but several where people have walked in and it's just them and they haven't brought anything with them. And we start asking them questions or they start realizing, oh, I need to record this or whatever. So just remember, you got to bring something to write with, even if it's virtual. Have your paper and pencil ready. You really should have a copy of the job description, either printed out or up on a screen or whatever it is, so that you know exactly the types of things that they're interested in. The job description is a document that describes the perfect candidate, which usually does not exist. But in a perfect world, this is what we would have. So, and you can also realize on that job description that they probably point to a lot of things repeatedly. Those things that are repeated mean that's what's most important to them. That's the skill or the what they want you to do more than anything else. So be very familiar with the job description. If they're talking about Java, make sure you're ready to answer questions about Java. I mentioned again, digital copy of your resume. And if they ask for portfolios or allow you to have your laptop in those interviews, great, you've got it. Just like you were saying, a lot of people like to do searches. That's how most people find information and find out how to do things. And there is a piece of that that will be in the technical interview. So let's go on to the first one, that phone screen. The very first thing to remember with any technical interview is that you need to be thinking out loud. It might seem really awkward, okay? You're talking to yourself as you're approaching the problem. They want you to show them how you approach problems. It may be that while you're on that phone screen, I would ask them, am I allowed to, what am I allowed to do during this interview? I've definitely had candidates that have looked things up, or I could hear the keyboard clicking as they pulled up a couple of things. I didn't feel like it was cheating. I felt like they were, they may have had some notes. People get nervous. I want them to be successful. And I know that somewhere down the line, if they don't know the answers and they're just always just looking at their notes and can't do it from their own skill, that'll come out on some level. So number 2, during that phone interview, be honest. If you don't know, you don't know, and it's okay. And you could even say in here, I don't know, but if I was doing this completely on my own, I'd probably be doing a Google search, or I'd probably be looking this up in my textbook to see if I could find something out. And that's okay. You can let them know that you like to look up resources, and that's fine.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is something that I'm not quite sure how to balance. How do you balance like saying you don't know versus giving it your best attempt?
That's a good question too. I would say don't sell yourself short. If you do get yourself into a spot where you really don't know what's next, then you've got to be open. You can say, but I don't think I know exactly how to do it, but here's how I think I would do it, and go through it that way. You might be absolutely right when you're at the end of that question. So don't sell yourself short. If it's like, oh man, I knew this once. I can't remember the technical term for this, but just move through it as best you can, and you may have passed. Okay. And I think that's where number 3 comes, where it says, don't just tell me about it, show me an example verbally on that phone interview. Use specific examples in a SAR format as best you can. Maybe, well, I don't know that one, but I do know this, and it's related, and here's how I would solve it, or here's how you would do that. Not everyone's going to be incredibly strong at every question that's asked by the recruiter, but you can usually figure out if you have something related. Okay, so that's the phone screen, is kind of thinking out loud, being honest. Remember, you're probably going to be going through technical questions with a non-technical person, so it doesn't mean you can get away with stuff, but make sure you don't talk over the head of somebody. But just be aware that that's what it is. What they want to, they're going to probably be taking notes saying, okay, I think this person definitely has some enthusiasm and passion for technology, because some of the questions are going to be designed that way. And they're going to be evaluating your communication skills to communicate technical terms, okay? How do you get through it? And if you pass, then the hard stuff's coming. The screen on the phone is usually that easy one for most everybody, okay? Let's talk about the second stage in a tech interview, which is usually some sort of technical challenge or assignment. If you are a programmer, sometimes this is how to, do the coding, some sort of coding challenge, or maybe it's the hacker rank that you have to take for some companies. It could be all kinds of different things. First step, again, this is all about doing the problem out loud. If it's live, I should say that sometimes these assignments are take-home. They're not going to be live, but I would still practice by thinking out loud. Solve the problems out loud. Make it collaborative process as well. It's okay to ask questions at the very beginning of when they give you that assignment. It's up to you to understand the parameters. And so it's okay to ask questions. Don't just sit back and have them tell you you're going to do this and then turn it in tomorrow. Great, that's wonderful, but ask questions. There may be more information that you can get from them on how to do it. Now, once you do sit down and you're doing this assessment on your own, in general, the take-home assessments are fairly nebulous. They may not have given you all of the information. And so you have to make sure you can manage your time. And because most of them will be timed, or they'll be something where you have to get it in the next day by a certain time. So when I say managing your time, I'm really talking about don't allow yourself to make too many assumptions. It's going to be a fairly basic assignment. Get those assumptions made early. Don't allow yourself to have what's called scope creep, where you start going down some rabbit hole somewhere thinking maybe they want this, or maybe they want this, or maybe they assume this. You can get yourself stuck. So just make a couple of assumptions right off. Stick to what you think is the most likely scenario that they want you to do, and then do it. Number 5 is plan things out. Do your own version of whiteboarding. Don't just start coding if it's that type of a thing, or don't start a process, or whatever it might be. Don't do those things without planning it out first, okay? It's been shown over and over that if you'll do just a little bit of outlining as to what you think you'll do first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, you'll be much more successful as you do these assignments, okay? And then the most important thing is testing it. If it's a math problem that they've asked you to do, a big series of math problems, you can find a way to test it and make sure that you're getting to the right conclusions every time, then do it. If it's an app, do it, test it, make sure it has the outcome you wanted. And then make sure that you are ready to explain why you did what you did to get to your answer, to solve the problem, to finish that assessment, okay? Because I guarantee you the questions will come. There's not always just one way to solve a problem. We all understand that. But why you chose to do it a certain way will be part of the interview. So the outcomes, what they're looking for when they send you with either a homework assignment or they send you somewhere, now they're really going to be looking at the technical skills. Okay, they're going to be assessing that a lot more. If there's coding involved, they want to see how you code and how you annotate, whatever it is that you might do as you go through that. They are going to look to see if you tested it, if you tried it, to make sure everything's okay. Of course, they're looking at problem-solving skills and collaboration and honesty as well. So just remember, it's easy sometimes if you're given something in this realm and you get to do it on your own at home, there's a tendency to cheat on some level, to go out and maybe ask somebody for help or whatever. But don't do it, because during the follow-up interview, as I mentioned before, it's common for that employer to probe you with explanatory questions. Why the choices were made? Why did you do this? If you get help on it, or you cheated on it on some way, and you don't know why you did what you did, it's going to be obvious. So don't cheat. You want to make sure that you really feel confident in how you did it. Also, sometimes there are bonus questions in the take-home challenges or assignments. If you have extra time, let's say they asked you to code something and then turn your code in. If you went in and commented in your code, or you finished a couple of the bonus questions or whatever they might be, that really makes a difference to the recruiter and the team, the technical team that's going to evaluate your results. So look and make sure if there are bonus or extra credit, almost little things in the take-home assignment, do them. It will make a difference in how they look at you. All right, the last one, which is very common and can be the most intimidating, is the whiteboard challenge. Depending on the company, this may be kind of an informal thing where they have you there in person and you're with a group of people and it's just a conversation, and they start asking you to do certain things on the whiteboard, or it really depends. I've seen the structure be very different depending on the company, but it's critical. It's absolutely probably the most critical part of your technical interview is, once again, thinking out loud and watching you do something with just the resources that are in your brain and the people that you're around, okay? Make sure you ask questions again, clarifying questions. I can't tell you how often I've been in interviews that are technical like this, or that the company has put everybody in a room and they've given instructions to build something. And you watch everybody just jump in and start doing it. And you had a whole pocket full of additional explanation that you were willing to give, but the students and the candidates were not willing to ask because they just felt like, well, I can't really ask them additional information. Or I've even had a spec, an actual spec available to somebody, and had just a few students say, well, is there a plan? Is there a spec, or how this is supposed to turn out at the end of it? And I'd say, oh yeah, I have the instructions right here, or I have a picture of it, or I have its outcome right here. Ask those clarifying questions. Don't let yourself feel like you can't do that, okay? It's really important as you do whiteboard challenges to speak up and to speak slow while you're drawing it out. I guarantee you they're going to want you to talk while you're doing it. Tell me why you're doing that. Why did you choose that approach? Why are you choosing this function? Whatever it might be, you've got to make sure that you slow down and speak clearly, and use. It's important to use the technical terms, the formal terms for what you're using, not just general terms. If you know the function of something, use the function. If you know a formula, talk about the formula. If you know a scientific law that you're applying there, talk about that scientific law during that piece, so that they understand that you really understand what you're doing, okay? The very last piece is to be ready for feedback. Sometimes the feedback will be coming as you're doing the whiteboard challenge. They might question why you're doing that. They might suggest something right in the middle of it, or you might be stuck and you're going, oh, I am not really sure how to get this through. But maybe it's a data structure, maybe it's something else, and they may actually pipe up and give you some feedback. You sure that's a data structure, or whatever it might be? And maybe they're opening it up for dialogue to happen right then, so that you can solve problems together and then go through it. If you're not willing to take their advice or their feedback in the middle of the whiteboard challenge, then they'll probably say, well, this person probably isn't going to reach out for the help that they need. You mentioned earlier that people solve problems a lot of times by going out to additional experts, to other resources. Talk about that, what you would do next. I would probably be wanting to look up some strings of code that do something like this. I think it would be like this, but I would probably be out looking for something, or I would be asking one of my teammates, am I allowed to ask any of you for additional help in this one section? And they might say no, but I have seen it where they'll say, sure, I can give you a hint, or I can give you an idea as to what might work, and then see if you can take that advice and continue on with the logic that they pointed you towards, okay? It's very important to also remember that when you're done with the challenge, they will then be very critical, but not in a bad way, but they'll probably tear apart what you did, really wanting to know, why did you choose this? Why did you do that? And it might make you feel like you failed it, but it's okay to defend the reason that you did it. And it's okay. And if you realize that, wow, that was a bad way to do it, and they gave you some pointers on that, be grateful. Maybe write down that advice they gave you, because chances are this won't be your only technical interview. You'll probably have several of these with several companies as you try and find jobs. So you might as well figure out best practices and answers to some questions as you go. It'll be important for you to use those later on. So what they're looking for, of course, it's heavy on that technical skill. If it's a coding challenge, yeah, they want to look at your syntax and everything else that you're doing. They want to see if you have that ability to think creatively. Okay, you may go down a path that none of them thought of, and they'll be going, whoa, this is not at all what we would have done, but I see where you went, and that was very creative to come to try and solve the problem that way. Remember, the testing phase has got to be part of your whiteboard challenge as well. So they're going to look and see if you challenge yourself, if you test something, you know, and you can be iterative in that. They want to see a systemic, or a systematic approach to solving a problem. They want to see if you are good with collaborating with people. You may be doing a whiteboard challenge with someone else. I have seen that. We didn't do that in the company that I worked for a long time, but I've seen it. I've seen team approaches. And then one of the last things that I've seen is a big picture question that they might ask at the end of your technical interview. You just created something, or you just solved a problem, but they may ask you to pull back, zoom back, and see if you can see where your piece fit into a larger system, into something bigger. And they just want to see if you can think outside of that box of solving that one problem. Can I see what pieces it would be touching or relating to? And so that's an important thing to think of as you go through those challenges, okay? All right. Then the very last thing that happens after your technical interview is done, there has to be some follow-up. It can be in the form of, you know, a quick thank you email that you send as soon as you get in your car. It could be something you send that evening or the next day. It could be once you find out that that you didn't make it, maybe reaching out to find out what were the reasons. Would they be willing to share some of the things you could be working on for the next time you ever interview with them or with another company? So it's important to find out what their timelines are, but you got to follow up and give some thank yous. I always appreciated those as a recruiter, and it kind of shows those that are really interested in you versus those that are just getting through this interview process and they're just done. Okay. We are about done. Are there any questions anybody would want to ask at this point?
Yeah, I do have one question.
Sure.
So for the whiteboard interview, you said that while we do that challenge, they might give you some feedback while you go through that. Is it like a bad sign to get like a lot of feedback from them, or is just okay to get like a lot of feedback from there?
I really think it's not a bad sign to get feedback from them. if I've seen some of our hiring managers that I've worked with, as you go through these technical interviews, if someone is so off and they're not even coming close, then usually it's very quiet in the room and there's not a lot of feedback given. It's like, okay, thank you, and away you go, okay? But a lot of times as they're asking you questions or giving you feedback, it's part of the interview process. It could be the style of the individual who's doing it. It may be that they give tons of feedback and tons of questions. Could be that another interviewer is very quiet and they don't give you a lot of feedback, but it doesn't mean you did a bad job. So don't read into that very much. Just take advantage of the feedback you do get, ask some questions. Maybe when it's over, say, is there a better way you would have approached this problem? And would they be willing to show you? And if they're like, no, I think you did a great job, then that should help you understand that you did okay. But you could also learn something very valuable if they're willing to say, yeah, let me show you what I would have done. And it would have cut half your code out or whatever. It's like, oh, I just learned something. That's wonderful. So,
Interesting. How long are those interviews usually?
really depends. Anywhere from an hour to half a day. I know that sounds daunting, but it's, I mean, if you look up I think Google, they do like a full day of whiteboarding and technical challenges. Other companies, it's a 2-hour panel interview. I would say plan on a minimum of an hour and probably no more than 4 hours. And I know that sounds like just, oh my gosh, that's so much. But their technical interview may be that we have you come in and we do whiteboarding, and then we send you to another room for this, and then we do some sort of Q&A. But final interviews are usually quite long.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one. So you talked about the 3 different ones, the technical interview or assignment, the whiteboard challenge, and the phone screen. Are those usually 3 separate interviews, or especially like the technical interview and the whiteboard challenge, do those often happen at the same meeting?
Phone screen usually takes place all by itself. That's usually something that happens right after career fair probably, and they've done the behavioral interview with you, maybe on campus, or maybe they've done that over the phone. I've seen it as a combination of behavioral and technical phone screen in one call. But usually that happens and they're not gonna proceed until that's done. Now, I have seen the reverse order of stage 2 and 3. So I've seen them have you come in and do a whiteboard interview and then send you home with an assignment. So it's not always in that order, but it just depends on how quickly the company wants to get through the interview process. If they're in a hurry, they may say, hey, plan on coming for a whole day, and we're gonna do a bunch of different things throughout that entire day. But the phone screen will be separate.
Okay. And is any of what to expect different for an internship as opposed to a full-time job?
Yes. It's going to be the level of questions. So if you are a junior and you're in your first semester of your junior year and they're asking you questions that a senior should know, then that's rare. Most of the time they ask you everything you should know up to where you are in school. And they'll probably push you past that just a little bit. But, you know, they understand that interns are still in school, they're still learning, they haven't finished everything up yet. So yeah, the level of technical questions will be different than when you're a senior and you're having that full-time job interview. Now they're gonna ask you everything you should know, including some things beyond that. They always try and push you with a few extra questions to see if you might just know on your own, or maybe you've done enough work on your own that you can jump in there. But hopefully that helps you understand. Internship questions, they just ask you up to the level of where you are in school for the most part. And then it's probably also, remember, look at the job description. If they say you should be able to do these 3 things, they're going to ask you questions to have you do those 3 things. Any other questions?
I have a question about kind of what you were just talking about, the job description. So I can see how I could study for a certain job interview if I had applied for that and I could see a job description. But when you go to the career fair, there is no job description. You know, it's just very open-ended. So how do you prepare for an interview if you just know it's that company?
Yeah. Well, I would say if you get a chance to talk to one of the reps that's at the fair, so this year it's all virtual. So the good part about this year is they're going to post the job descriptions on their in their room. It's a virtual room they have. So they're going to post them there, but have the conversation with the recruiter. Ask the questions about the requirements. What are the top things in a technical interview that they go after? What are some specific coding skills that I might need, or if they're asking me about fluid dynamics, how much depth do they want me to know about it? The recruiter will give you as much information as they can. And I guarantee you, at most of those fairs, there will also be someone technical attending as well. So find that person and ask them those technical questions, make notes, and then you can go and prepare for it. Yes, I've seen job descriptions that say summer intern, must have a degree in mechanical engineering and be in their junior year. And that's about all the more it says. And that doesn't give you a lot of help. So you have to probe by getting that information yourself. Or go to LinkedIn and find someone who was an intern last year and ask them what they needed. So. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you do have some others, feel free to send us an email. I'll put in my email address in the chat. It is, make sure this is working. There's my email address. You can also schedule some one-on-one time. My office hours are scheduled through careers.byu.edu. You can find times every day when we can schedule a Zoom call or whatever. We can go through some things just to help answer or clarify any additional questions or look at your resume, whatever you need help with. Also, make sure you go and use the resources that are out there as the companies are coming on site this year, the virtual prep events. There are several companies that are talking about technical interviewing. There's some that are actually doing prep events for code challenges. Take advantage of those things so that you feel comfortable, and go to their info sessions, ask their questions, get some of those clarifying questions taken care of now so that when it comes time for the interview, you're armed and ready to go. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and best of luck. Go to the career fair this week, and we will talk to you all later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.